to Big Fish, everybody. You put it into the microphone so that everyone could hear. Fantastic. Welcome to Big Fish. We hope that we're going to have another great week this week. We've got a game and we've got a song and we've got some craft and a memory verse and a story as well. All the different things we would normally have for you, we've got again this week. So it's going to be a great and fantastic time. But before we get on to everything else, let me tell you a little bit about what you need for the craft this week. Hopefully you saw our post on Tuesday, but if you didn't, then what you need is very simple this week. You need a paper plate, you need a pair of scissors, and then you need either crayons or pens or pencils or even paint if you want to do this week. I'm using crayons because I don't have time to let the paint dry, but the colours you need are just yellow, orange and brown. Very simple. And if you've got them and want them, you can use some googly eyes as well. But if you haven't, I haven't got any this week. I'm just going to be drawing the eyes on. That's all you need. So there we go. So it's going to be a very simple craft this week, but hopefully a very enjoyable one as well. But now, we're going to do our game this week. So, Elisha, are you going to come and be my animal karate expert this week? Go on, come up by here and be my animal karate expert. So, you're going to hold those, that's fine, yeah. So if you've been with us before, you know how this works, but if not, in a moment, I'm going to say animal karate. Kids, do your thing, and you need to choose between what animals can they choose between? You play in the toy. Right. Can you tell me what animals they can choose between? What's this one, Elisha? It's a... Elisha, what's this animal? Elisha, what's this animal right here? Can you tell me this animal? What's this animal? A giraffe. What's the next one they can choose? A crocodile. A crocodile. Or then the last one is a... What is this one? What's this one? A penguin. So you choose one of those, then I'll say animal karate expert, do your thing, and me or Elisha will choose one of those things. If we choose the same as you, you're out, you just sit down. But if you chose something different, you're through to our next round, and you may be one of our winners. So here we go. You ready? So animal. No, it doesn't look like it. Right, you ready? You're going to help me? Here we go. Animal karate kids, do your thing. What noise do you have to make? Hi-ya! So, choose between the giraffe, the crocodile, or the penguin. Choose which one you're going to do. And once you've got that there, now we're going to see. Animal karate expert, do your thing. Hi-ya! Which one are you going to choose, Elisha? Which one? The giraffe, the crocodile? The penguin. The penguin. We're going to start with the penguin. So if you were a penguin this week there on that first round, you're out, sit down. But don't worry, it won't last very long. It's just something to warm us up, to get things ready. So, here we go. Next round. Animal karate kids, do your thing. Hi-ya! So again, choose between the giraffe, the crocodile, or the penguin. Choose which one you're going to do. There we go, excellent. So, animal karate expert, do your thing. Hi-ya! Which one are you going to choose, Elisha? The giraffe, the crocodile, or the penguin? Which one are you going to choose? Quick, tell me, which one are you going to choose?
The penguin.
The penguin again! The penguin again! Oh, sneaky from our expert this week. So if you chose a penguin, you're out. But again, if you chose the giraffe or the crocodile, you're still in and into our final round. So, here we go. Last round. Animal karate kids, do your thing. Hi-ya! So choose for the last time between the giraffe, the crocodile, or the penguin. Which one are you going to choose? Choose it there. Stick with what you've got. Okay. Animal karate expert, do your thing. Hi-ya! Which one are you going to choose, Elisha? The giraffe. So if you had the giraffe that time, you're out. But if you had a crocodile or a penguin, you're one of our winners. Congratulations. Well done, well done. But now we're going to go and sing our song. So everybody up on their feet, singing as loud as you can, the best actions you can. And we're going to sing our theme song for this term, God's Great Family. So enjoy it.
Made us, he knew we'd run from him and try to hide our sin, but he wanted to save us. His own were on his heart before he made the stars. Oh, oh, no one is good, not even one, but God can make us daughters, God can make us sons. Jesus paid the price when he offered up his life, so we could be part of God's great family. pull. He's irresistible. When the Spirit calls us, He brings the dead to life. He gives the blind new eyes. Oh, oh, no one is good, not even one. But God can make us daughters, God can make us sons. Jesus paid the price when He offered up His life, so we could be part of God's great family. And when He calls, when He draws, we are His forever. He will never let you go. He will never let you go. And when He calls, when He draws, we are His forever. He will never let you go. He will never let you go. Oh, oh, no one is good, not even one. But God can make us daughters, God can make us sons. And Jesus paid the price when He offered up His life, so we could be part of God's great family.
Now, our story from the Bible this week is all about someone who had a very, very important job. He actually worked for the king himself. He was one of the king's top servants. But more important than that is throughout his entire life, he always trusted and followed God and always tried to do what was right. Now, when you grow up, you might have an important job. Maybe you'll get to work for the king or queen. Maybe you'll be a teacher. Maybe you'll be the prime minister. Or maybe, like me, you'll get to go around and do what I think is the most amazing job of telling people all about Jesus. But hopefully, no matter what your job is, you'll do the same as the man in our story and follow and trust God and do what is right. Now, I need to tell you the name of the man in our story, don't I? Well, I'm not going to tell you, but I'm going to paint it up on the board by here. The man in our story today was called this by here. He was called Daniel. Now, Daniel's name means God is my judge. And as I said, Daniel worked for the king. Well, he didn't just work for one king. During his long life, he actually worked for lots and lots of different kings. But at the beginning of our story today, he actually worked for a king called King Darius. And so I'll just paint Darius up by here on his throne. And Darius had lots of different people who would help him to run the country. And he had 3 special people at the top of all of his servants, all of his advisors. And Daniel was actually one of those. He was one of the 3 top people in the whole country helping the king to know how best to run the country. Well, you see, Darius, though, one day sat and he thought, you know, Daniel is really wise. He's really helpful. He's the best of all of my servants. Actually, I think I'm going to promote Daniel. I think I'm going to make Daniel in charge of all the country just under me. Well, that was fantastic news for Daniel, wasn't it? He was going to have even more responsibility. But it wasn't so good news for the other 2. And in fact, they were really, really jealous. They said, who does the king think he is, choosing Daniel to do this job? You know, we've been here all of our lives. We've worked for the king all of our lives. He should choose us instead. They were really, really jealous. And, you know, sometimes we might get jealous as well, isn't it? Or we start to perhaps think things a little bit like that. And we've got to stop ourselves when we do, because it's never a good thing. Because when we start thinking like that, often we end up saying things that we know we shouldn't say, or doing things that we know we shouldn't do. And actually, those things cause a great big problem, because actually those things cause something that causes a problem between us and God. You see, I said, didn't I, that Daniel's name means God is my judge. But the Bible doesn't just say that God is only going to judge Daniel, but actually the Bible says that God is going to judge everybody. And so actually, these things that we think that are wrong, or say that are wrong, or do that are wrong, cause a great big problem. Because you see, God is perfect, and so we have to be perfect in order to live up to his perfect law. And actually, when we
think and say and do things that are wrong, it means we fall short and actually we can't get to be with God. But he's done something to sort it out. Well, these servants, as I said, were really, really jealous. They decided that they were going to try and get Daniel into trouble. They thought, how can we get Daniel into trouble with the king? I wonder, has he perhaps told any lies? No, Daniel always tells the truth. Has he stolen anything? No, Daniel's always good. He always does things. They started to think, and they couldn't think of a single thing that Daniel could have done wrong. And then they thought, well, if we're going to catch Daniel out, if we're going to get him into trouble, it has to be something to do with Daniel's God, because he always trusts and follows his God above everything else. And that's when they got it. They came up with a plan. And so the two servants went before the king, and they bowed down before the king, and they said, "Oh, king, live forever." Because, well, that's what people used to say to kings back in those days. And they said, "Oh, king, we've been thinking. We're thinking that you should pass a new law." And a new law, said the king. "Well, what is it?" "Well, king, we know that you are amazing and incredible and special, and so we think you should pass a new law that says that no one is allowed to pray to any god except you, just for the next month, to make you feel even more special and even more important." Well, do you think that was a good law? It wasn't, was it? You see, kings are important, but, well, they're just kings. They're just human beings like you and me. They're not God, and so we shouldn't pray to them. But King Darius sat there and he thought, well, just a temporary measure, just a month. Oh, it would make me feel even more special, even more important. I like this idea. And so the king wrote out the new law and sealed it with his special ring, which meant no one could change the law, not even the king himself. And you see, the king didn't realize, but he'd actually been this by here. Two of his top advisors had actually, well, tricked him. You see, they didn't care about the king feeling more special and more important. They just wanted to get Daniel into trouble and to get Daniel out of the way. And so that's why they made sure that the new law said that anyone who broke it would be thrown into the lion's den. The king had listened to people that he shouldn't have listened to. And it had got him into big, big trouble. And you know, sometimes that might happen to us as well, isn't it? Perhaps people try to encourage us to do something, and we know deep down in our heart that it's the wrong thing to do. Or maybe we hear that little voice inside that perhaps tells us, instead of doing the right thing, perhaps, "Oh, just tell a lie, it'll be okay." Or "Go on, just take that thing, even though it doesn't belong to you." And as I said, when we listen to those people around us that are trying to lead us the wrong way, or we listen to that little voice inside, actually it causes a great big problem, because it forms this barrier that means we can't live up to God's perfect standard. Well, Daniel heard all about the new law. What was Daniel going to do? What was going to happen? Was he going to stop praying to his God? Well, no. Because you see, Daniel knew that above everything else, he should always trust and follow God and do what was right. And you see, it was a really big deal to Daniel, because Daniel didn't just pray once a day. Daniel prayed 3 times a day, but he probably prayed more than that as well. And actually it's good for us as well, isn't it, to think about putting a time aside to pray to God. Maybe at the start of the day to ask God for his help through the day, or at the end of the day to thank God for all of the great things that he's done and how he's helped us during that day. But as I said, Daniel would always go up to his room 3 times a day and pray to God. And so, well, that's just what Daniel did. Daniel went up to his room, he knelt down on his mat, and there he prayed to God, just like he always had. Because you see, Daniel realized that actually, even though he was going to break the king's law, it was more important for him to follow God's law. And God's law says that you shouldn't pray to anyone except for God. Well, this was just what the other 2 men had thought would happen. They saw Daniel through the window and they thought, "Ha, we've got him now. Ha, we've got him. There's no way that he can get out of this." You see, Daniel realized that it was more important to do this by here. It was more important to be true to God than to follow the king's bad law. Well, the men didn't care about that. They didn't care that Daniel was just doing what was right. They went back before the king and they said, "Oh, king, live forever." Because that's what you used to say to kings back in those days. They said, "King, we've got some bad news." "Oh no," said the king. "What is it?" "King, you remember you passed that law saying that no one should pray to any god, they should just pray to you for the next month?" "Yes," said the king. "It's making me feel very special and very important." "Well, king, we've caught someone who's ignoring your law." "What?" said the king. "Who would dare do that?" "Well, king, it's actually your servant, Daniel." The king realized that he'd been tricked. He realized that the men had only got him to pass the law just to get Daniel into trouble. But remember, I said no one could change the law, not even the king himself. He started to think, can I change the law? No, I'm not allowed to do that. Can I change the punishment? No, I'm not allowed to do that. The king didn't know what to do because of what the men had done, because he'd listened to them. He was actually this by here. The king was trapped. He was stuck in a mess that he really shouldn't have been in, and he didn't know what he was going to do. And you know, the Bible says we're trapped as well. That actually, these things that we think and say and do that are wrong, actually, well, I said separate us from God. And they trap us away from God's family. They stop us from getting to be with him because we can't live up to his perfect law. That we're trapped, but God doesn't want it to be like that, and so he's done something to sort it out. But I'll tell you about that in a bit. Well, the king was trapped, but, well, he wasn't the only one that was trapped. Daniel was trapped as well. The guards came to arrest Daniel. The king said, "Daniel, I'm really, really sorry. I wish I could do something, but I don't know what to do." "Daniel, you know the punishment. You're going to be thrown into the lion's den." The king said, "Daniel, I hope that the God whom you serve will protect you." And with that, the guards threw Daniel into the lion's den and rolled a great huge stone across the entrance to the tomb. The king was really, really worried. He couldn't eat anything all night. He couldn't sleep all night. He thought, what have I done? I've thrown my favorite servant Daniel into the lion's den and he hasn't done anything wrong. It was all because I'd been tricked and I got trapped. I don't know what to do. I hope that his God will be able to help him. But you see, what the king didn't know, but Daniel did, is that the lion isn't the king of the jungle. The true king of the jungle is, well, actually God himself, because God created the lions, and God created the jungle, and God created everything. And so God is able to do anything. And so as soon as that stone was rolled across the entrance, God sent an angel to protect Daniel, because Daniel had been true to God and done what was right. And the angel closed the mouths of the lions. So just as the lions were about to pounce, suddenly their mouths were closed, and instead of being able to pounce on Daniel, they were just left, well, not able to do anything at all. So the lions thought, well, I guess there's nothing we can do. So they lay down and fell asleep. And Daniel, well, lay down and fell asleep next to them, knowing that everything would be okay because God was looking after him. Well, the next morning, King Darius raced out to the lion's den as quick as he possibly could, and he called, "Daniel, was your God able to protect you?" And then a voice came back and said, "O king, live forever." Because as we said, that's what people used to say to kings back in those days. The king ordered that the stone be rolled away, and there he could see inside the lion's den was Daniel, safe and well protected from harm. So the king brought Daniel out of the lion's den, and instead he threw the other two servants into the lion's den. And then he passed a new law. He said to everybody that they should respect the God of Daniel. The God who had protected Daniel, all because Daniel put his this by here. All because Daniel put his trust in God. And you know, just like God rescued Daniel, so God wants to rescue us from the trap that we're in by the things that we've done that are wrong, by the fact that we can't live up to his perfect law. And well, the way that God did that was by coming down from heaven down to earth as Jesus, and living a perfect life on this earth, never breaking any of God's laws. And then at the end of his life, he was placed on a cross. Not for anything he'd done wrong, because he hadn't done anything wrong. But he was placed there and took the punishment for the things that you and I have done wrong. So that actually, if we turn and say we're sorry and put our trust in him just like Daniel did, then actually he'll forgive us of all of those things. He'll give us his perfect record. So when we stand before God the judge one day, God will see Jesus' perfect record in our lives and welcome us in to be part of his family forevermore. And you know, Daniel's story reminds me a little bit about Jesus' story as well. Because you see, Daniel was thrown into the lion's den and a stone was rolled across, but God rescued him. And just the same, after Jesus died on the cross, he was placed in a tomb and a huge stone was rolled across, but God raised him from the dead. He brought him back to life so that actually anybody who puts their trust in him can know that they will one day be part of his family forevermore. You know, Daniel trusted and followed God, always doing what was right. And actually, the Bible says if we do the same, if we trust and follow God, doing what is right, then God will protect us and look out for us, just like he did for Daniel as well. And so, another story about someone who is a part of God's great family, and how we also can be part of God's great family by putting our trust in Jesus. Well, now it's time for our prayer. So, as always, put our hands on our shoulders like this. When I say 1, put your hands like this. When I say 2, cross your arms like this. When I say 3, close your eyes, bow your head. I'm going to pray, and we've got to listen very carefully, because we've got to listen to God as well as speaking to him to hear what he's saying to us. And then I'll say 4, stand up nice and straight, ready for the next bit of Big Fish Kids Club. So you ready? Here you go. Hands on the shoulders. Ready to go. 1. Oh, you've got to be quicker than that. You need to be as quick as you can possibly be. 1 person might be the one that lets you down, so be ready. Here you go. 1. That was good. 2, 3. God, I thank you so much for Daniel. God, I thank you how Daniel always did what was right and trusted in you, even though it meant that he was going to have to break the king's law. God, I pray that you help us, no matter what job we might hold, or no matter what might happen in our lives, to be like Daniel and always do what is right and good by trusting and following you. Amen. 4. Sat up nice and straight, ready to go, because now we're going to have a look at our memory verse and our craft for this week. So let's go and see what it is.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that story, all about Daniel. Actually, it was nail-biting, wasn't it? Wondering what was going to happen when he went into the lion's den, but we saw that God rescued him because he trusted in God. And so we'll have a look at our verse this week, which links in all with that. And it says this by here: our God is a God who saves. From Psalm 68, verse 20. And we saw that with Daniel, didn't we? That God saved him. That our God is a God who saves. But also, God saves us as well by sending Jesus to die on the cross for each and every one. So that's our verse again. Our God is a God who saves. Psalm 68, verse 20. Now, this week we're going to make a very simple craft with the things I told you about earlier. We're going to make a lion mask. Something a bit like this one by here. So, if you've got your paper plate ready, then all you need to do is do some colouring in to start off. So, what we're going to do is the very inner circle of the plate, we're going to colour in yellow, or you can do a bit of orange if you want, like Elisha. So that very inner one, so we'll go round the outside of that in yellow, first of all. Now, as I said, if you've got pens or pencils or paints look really great, but I don't have time to let the paint dry. You'd have to sit there whilst the paint dried waiting for the next bit if I did paint. But if you want to use paint and then perhaps finish it off later on or another day, then you can do. But I'm just going to use crayons because they show up quite well on the screen so you can see what I'm doing.
I can see you doing it.
You can see it on there, can you? So, yellow by there in the middle. You're going to do some, you'll do some yellow in the middle as well, rather than Elisha. Then, what we're going to do then, on all the rest of the outside, we're going to do brown, and then we'll do a bit of orange over the top of it as well to give it that kind of lion kind of look. So, we're going to do the inside circle bit first because it's a bit easier to do that than the ridged bit, and then we'll come and do the ridged bit afterwards. As I said, it's a very simple craft this week, but
Look at my new lion.
I like very simple crafts. Becky did ones that were a bit more complicated, but I like keeping it nice and
Chapter
simple.
4, I got the 3, I got that 1, I got Zona.
Well, sorry, what about Jonah?
Chapter 3, verse 4.
Chapter 3 verse 4 is about Jonah, is it? Okay.
Yeah, about he goes into the lion's den.
Now, Jonah didn't get thrown into the lion's den. Who got thrown into the lion's den? Jonah was in the belly of the great big fish, wasn't he? Who was in the lion's den? Do you remember? It was
Daniel.
Daniel. Yeah, Daniel is who our story was about today.
He's been
Now, you've just got to see the story, but Elisha hasn't seen the story yet, so that's why Elisha's a bit confused.
Daniel's been a grown-up.
Yeah, Daniel was a grown-up. Daniel was one of the servants of the king. So, sorry, I forgot because I was answering Elisha. Now we're just going to colour the outside, but as I say, it's just sort of pressed down hard. It's a bit more difficult over the ridged bits, but just colour it in, do as best you can. If you've got paints, it's a bit easier because they just go over the top nice and easily. But whatever you're using, crayons, pencils, pens, paints, just do it as best you can there with that. How are you doing there, pal? You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm doing it slowly.
So, do you remember what happened to Daniel when he went in the lion's den, Elisha? Do
Why?
you remember what happened? What did God send to keep Daniel safe?
The really big angel.
Really big angel, and the angel closed the mouths of the lions to keep Daniel safe. All because Daniel trusted in God and tried to always do what was right by God.
And the big orange one, I got the small big one.
Oh,
I want round you to get it.
Yeah, can I have this orange one by here? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, because now we've got our outside bit there, we're going to do a bit of a sort of flash of orange. So just on the brown inside bit and halfway up the ridge bit, we're just going to do some orange to create this sort of like sunbursty kind of effect to give the
A
thing.
sock.
What's right?
A sock. Oh, I got Lucy, lion.
So just doing it like that, but there, just sort of part way up to there to get that sort of line between. It doesn't have to be too neat because it's a mane of a lion. It's not sort of neat. They don't get to go to the hairdressers. They just have their mane as it is out in the wild.
The hairdressers?
Yeah, lions don't go to the hairdressers
Why?
because lions don't have hairdressers. Hairdressers are just for people. Or sometimes people take their dogs or their cats to the hairdresser as well, but mostly just for people. Lions don't have hairdressers. Because lions normally live out in the wild, don't they? You don't get lions living in people's houses normally. That kind of thing.
Why?
Because lions are dangerous. That was the problem for Daniel, wasn't it? The lions were actually going to eat him if God hadn't rescued him. But fortunately for Daniel, because he trusted in God, God kept him safe. So, if you've got your orange bits all around the outside, but there to give that kind of sunburst kind of thing, I'm going to go back to the brown to draw on our face. Now, as I said, if you've got googly eyes or something like that, you can stick them on. I don't have any here, so I'm just going to draw some eyes on. But if you've got something like that, you can sort of do that to make it better. Or equally the same, if you want to stick on some pipe cleaners or something for the whiskers, I couldn't think of the word then, you could do that, but I'm just going to draw it on to keep it nice and simple. So if you've just got a crayon like me, you can just draw it on, same as me. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to do a triangle in the middle.
Aki lion.
Yours is an Aki lion. Why is it an Aki lion?
Because wow.
Because it goes rah.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do a triangle in the middle by there, sort of, with the point down for the nose. Then from there, we're going to come a straight line down like that.
That camera's all connected. If what this camera, the
You're just checking the camera, so you're making sure they're both working. Don't touch it.
Those are both working.
Okay. Do you want me to draw a lion's face on your lion for you, Elisha? So we just got the whiskers coming out from there. I'm just going to do 3 whiskers either side. So one straight line out from the top of the triangle at the middle.
And some eyes on.
You've just drawn some eyes on, have you? Okay, well done.
I don't.
You haven't drawn some eyes on. And then just some smaller triangles for our eyes by there.
Lions. I like my eyes. I like tiny. What's
So our sort of a fierce looking lion there. So just, if your eyes, like mine aren't, don't really match up, just try to get them, just give them a bit of adjustment to try and get them to match up. Pair of eyes by there. And then just to get our mane around the outside, what we're going to do is we're going to take our scissors and we're going to cut through the brown and the orange bits up to where the yellow starts.
Stick my
And we're going to go like that.
lion on.
And about a
Stick
centimetre
my
round.
lion on.
We're going to do that all the way around, about a centimetre round. Just keep cutting from the outside to the middle to give him a sort of mane that will move around and flap around as you sort of do things like that. So try to be more careful than me and not the yellow like I just did, but just trying to keep it nice and simple by there so that you can sort of. And as I said, this is going to be
And this no comes there and there.
a simple and straightforward craft this week. Just making a lion mask to help us to remember all about Daniel and the lions and how God kept Daniel safe from the lions by sending the angel. And it was all
A really
because
big lion.
Daniel trusted in God and did what was right, wasn't he? He wasn't going to follow what the king said, because the king's law was a bad law and the king had just been tricked into passing it. But Daniel knew it was more important to follow God's law than to break God's law to follow the king's law. So just keep going round. It takes a little while to get all the way around your plate, but just keep going, cut after cut. Just nice little things. If you're a bit young to use the scissors, get your grown-up to help you, that kind of thing. And so, last one by there. Excellent. So, we've got our lion mask by there, but what we can also do to help us to remember things is if you turn it over, then on the back you can write on the memory verse. So, our memory verse this week, just to remind you what it says this. Our God is a God who saves. Oh, I put an exclamation mark at the end of there because I think it's a really fantastic thing, isn't it, that we have a God who saves. And then that's from Psalm 68 verse 20. Okay, so you can write that on the back there. So when you look at the front, you'll have your lion to roar and remember that. And then when you turn it over, you'll have your verse which says, our God is a God who saves. And so that's it for this week. Seeing about Daniel and how he was part. You haven't quite got to that bit yet, you're early. Just give me one more minute to tell them something. So all about Daniel and how he was part of God's great family and how we can be part of God's great family because Jesus died to save us, just like he saved Daniel. And so we hope you have a great week and we see you next week. But remember, we've got lots of things that are going to be going up through the week. On tomorrow, we'll have our worksheet going up, which will have the memory verse on there as well to help you to remember, as well as a bit of an activity about the story of Daniel. And then on Saturday, we'll be posting the Bible verses where you'll find the story of Daniel in the lion's den in the Bible, so you can read through what it says in the Bible. Sunday will be our story recap video where you'll get to watch the story again, and there'll be a couple of questions at the end just to make you think a little bit more about it. On Monday, Humphrey will be there with our memory verse recap, telling us all about this verse. Then Tuesday, there'll be a story from us or one of our friends, a great Bible story, and a craft post to tell you what you need to get ready for next week's Big Fish. Then Wednesday, there'll be a cartoon version of this story. Before Thursday, it'll be Big Fish again, and it'll come round in no time at all. So, we hope you have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you in Big Fish next week. We'll have a look if we can get the ladder to raise it some more. Are you going to say goodbye to everybody though?
Bye!
Bye! See you next week.